Hey guys, good evening. It is Dr. Lauren Alvarado here at Restoring Life Chiropractic, and I'm super excited you're joining us tonight for our webinar that we're doing for parents on how to survive the holidays with a sensory kiddo and a child that's really just struggling with sensory issues or stress, anxiety, ADHD. Our kids that are struggling with those things and just innately seem extra stressed, they truly do struggle with the holiday season, and we see it all the time in kiddos. For those of us who don't have children who are struggling, we can see it when we go to those crowded places and we're out and about seeing Santa and doing all the things. The holidays are really hard for kids because there's so much going on. So there's a few things we're going to talk about tonight. Number one, I'm going to walk through why kids tend to struggle more in the holiday season. Also, where is all that stress coming from? Why do they not have the adaptability to deal with the stress that is coming at them and the extra demands? And then also what you can do about it. So we're going to dive into some of that and some of the science, because I want you to truly understand what's going on with your kiddo's brain, especially during a season of extra stress. So number one, why are kids more stressed in the holidays? Well, first of all, we all know as adults that we're more stressed during the holiday season. There's a lot more going on. There's all the financial stress that we have. There's all of the time commitments, all of the events that we have. So there's just so much more going on around the holidays. So even for adults, it can be stressful. So imagine being a little bitty person and having all this stuff coming at you too, because a few things happen to our kids. Once we get past like September into October and into the winter season, a few things are happening. Number one, they're really in the full demands of school. And yes, they're about to have a break, but a lot of things happen before that break. There's a lot of testing that just happened. These kiddos are really, they're not acclimating to their classroom and not getting their hand held as much. So there's a lot more demands on them. The other thing is there's a much heavier sugar load, right? So by the time we hit Halloween until getting through Thanksgiving and then getting through Christmas, there's an extra chemical load on our kids that looks like sugar, food coloring, from candy to desserts, all of that stuff. So that extra sugar in the system just adds stress. And when we basically add gasoline to a fire, if we have a kid that's already struggling, then sugar is that, okay? It's the gasoline to the fire. The other thing is that our kiddos are super excited about the holidays, but because the little demands on them, like their holiday parties at school and maybe going shopping and all the lights, all the sound and all the things, there's a lot more sensory coming at them that they actually have to process. So if the part of their brain that relays sensory is already struggling, then this extra sensory is just going to weigh it down and it's not going to be able to adapt, okay? So when we lose that adaptability is when we see the increase in meltdowns, behaviors, even motor tics, things like that, but also even illnesses. So a few other things is the cold weather. So the cold weather adds this degree of stress on their immune system. So if your child is a kiddo that's stressed, even if it's not necessarily sensory stuff, yes, Heather, our weekly adjustments are making all the differences in her kiddos' emotions and sleep. Heather, I love your babies so much and I love seeing them, and I think they were here yesterday and I loved loving on them. So yes, so adjustments help with adaptability, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. So the cold adds that extra stress to the immune system. And then one last thing, there's more technology. There's more technology in this season, usually because parents are busy, using TV to kind of babysit them for a second so you can function. I'm guilty of it, right? So also iPads, things like that. There's just more technology during this season. And one of the number one reasons for that is because our kids aren't outside running around, right? So the weather component makes it to where they're inside more, less physical activity, more screen time and technology. We've got more sugar. We have got the extra demands of school, and then we've got all the sensory stuff, all the bells and whistles and elves and, ornaments and all that, which is extra that they actually have to integrate. So we start to see these kids have more meltdowns, more sick days, more stress days, and just more incidents that goes on. So I want to give you some tips, some really practical things that even if you're a practice member with us already, this is totally going to help you. If you're not, this is going to help you too. So some tips to really, I want to help you tune into your child, because your child's body is always communicating with you, just like your body's always communicating with you, right? You know, if you've got aches and pains, tummy issues, those things, we typically kind of know where that's coming from if we overdid it or if we ourselves ate really bad. So our body's always communicating with us, but our kids' behavior and meltdowns and all that, it's not just that they're struggling, it's that their body is trying to also tell us something. So I want to just encourage you to listen. So a few things here. Number one, listen to what your child is showing you. Literally, if they're having a meltdown, whether or any type of display of stress, okay? And if you're in a crowded place, if you're with family, if you're in front of people, wherever you are, I want you to stop and ask yourself, like, what are they trying to tell me right now? Because sometimes they're so non-compliant and disorderly whenever it hits the fan that you really just want to make them, you know, sit there and eat or listen or do the thing I want you to do, right? Because that's going to make life easier. But oftentimes enforcing that thing that we want them to do, we're actually adding even more of a layer of stress. So we don't want to be an additional layer of stress to our kids during this season especially. So by listening, just stop and ask yourself, what is their behavior or their meltdown or whatever's happening telling me as a parent? Because when you tune in, you'll probably realize, okay, well, this is too much and we need to change to plan B. And plan B doesn't have to be miss out on everything, but it might look like, let's sit at a different table. Let's get some of this stuff out of your way. Let's sit on the floor. You know, let me hold you. Let me look into your eyes and talk to you and help you through this situation instead of just forcing them through it because we're on a schedule and we're trying to get things done. Because ultimately, our kids' mental health and then our connection to them and that understanding trumps every Christmas party, every gathering, every picture with Santa. So just tune in, okay? So number two, increase physical activity. So increasing your child's physical activity is such a great thing to do whenever they are a little kiddo that manages to be in stress mode more. Just like if you hit the gym every day, like you would feel better, you'd be managing stress better, you'd be in a better mood. Why? You're gonna produce more endorphins, you're gonna fire the actual parts of your prefrontal cortex, your brain, that control emotions. So you're actually gonna inhibit some of those stress hormones. So you exercising, well, if that does that for you, it also does that for your child. So getting that extra physical activity will help them control emotions. So things that I like to do whenever it's winter and yucky outside is we like to do hide and seek, which we also know we don't want to overstimulate, right? But good sensory exercises are things like frog jumps. So Simon says, jump like a frog. Simon says, do whatever, all these little Simon Says things. I like to have the kids imitate animals basically because that's easy. Walk like a duck, and they think it's funny, and I'm like, quack like a duck. And so it's just a fun Simon Says game that you can do with your kids or whatever your version is to get physical activity into their body during the winter time, especially when they're tearing the house down, right? So next thing is really trying to control that chemical component. And I know I want my kids to enjoy the sugary stuff too and not be left out. And you don't have to leave your kid out, but you can mix things up a little bit to where you are at least controlling some of those things like artificial sweeteners and artificial colors. So what I do, for instance, let's use Halloween as an example. Halloween, I go to Sprouts or I go to Whole Foods and I get bulk organic candy. You can even get it on Amazon. So there's still time to Amazon some organic treats for your kids for Christmas. So I get organic stuff and it's still, there's sugar in it, but it is cleaner. So if you are going to do sugar, go the clean route, okay? The other thing is don't be afraid to dial down the sugar and bake with stevia and make, some different options for your kids that aren't going to be so loaded with all the junk. Even when we go to the movie theater, I stop at the store and I grab stuff. And some people make fun of me, but I'm okay with it because at the end of the day, I'm protecting my child's neurology, and that means I'm protecting their future. So I'm okay with it. So you be okay with it. If your sister-in-law is going to think that you're ridiculous because you won't let your kids have what her kids are having, that's okay. So ways to make your kid not feel left out is I always bring I find out what we're having, and I bring like the healthy alternative, not to everything, but the main trigger thing. So really all that is artificial sugar and artificial food coloring and things like that. So definitely look into decreasing the chemical component. But here's the bottom line. Whatever our body is getting into the system, so stress, which all the things we talked about that can cause stress this time of year, however much stress we're getting into the system is what's going to come out of the system. So that's why you see the increase in behaviors and increase in anxiety and all of that stuff. But there is a way that you can change that relay system of what comes in, comes out, because we can't always put them in a bubble, right? I wish sometimes we could, but we can't put them in a bubble. But what we can do is actually increase their adaptability to stress. Because the fact is, let's take a kid that's struggling with sensory issues, anxiety, ADHD, behaviors, defiance, all this kind of stress stuff. And let's take another kid that's not and put them side by side. And let's take them through the same Christmas day, the same Christmas morning, the same trip to Santa, and all of that stuff, even the same food, sugar, lack of activity, demands, cold weather, all that stuff. And why would one kid actually have the meltdown or get sick from all the sugar, and why would the other kid not? The difference is the other child's ability to adapt and overcome the stress that's coming at them. So we help kids every single day in our office increase their adaptability. So I want you to think about this. Imagine your child as their body being their little car that they're driving around town, right? And they're driving around, stop at the red light. Their RPMs on their car should drop and idle low, just like when you're sitting at the red light in your car. Your RPM should be low because it gives you all this adaptability and space to deal with the increase in speed or stress before it redlines and would actually hurt your engine. Well, with your little ones, if their little car, if their resting RPMs are normally super high and they're not calm and connected, then what happens is their RPMs are already high, you add that extra stress and they redline. So they've lost this section in the middle. Tomorrow you're gonna think about this when you're driving, you're gonna look at your RPMs. They've lost this whole middle section between the minimum we need to idle and where we would redline. This is called adaptability. Now, in our office, we actually have the ability to measure a child's adaptability in their central nervous system, their brain, spinal cord, and their nerves. We can measure how well is their brain adapting to stress. And what we find with kids that are spun up and their RPMs are higher is just that. There's stress in the system even at rest, so they can't handle anything more and they've lost their adaptability in their nervous system. So whenever we go to work with these kiddos, adjusting them, increasing the good input to their brain, we see adaptability shift dramatically. And now this kid and their little RPMs and their stress mode drops significantly. Our scans that we do in our office, we measure those outcomes, so we get to see that change in adaptability. And now we see that their nervous system is idling much lower. And that's when we start hearing parents saying things like a mom yesterday that said, and in tears, and we all cried, that for the first time ever, her son, who I believe is 5 or 6, sent a painting home from school. And she started choking up and saying, I always get stuff home from my other kids, and I have never gotten anything home from him. And he sent a painting home, and his hands had paint on them, and he did this, and really she was crying for joy and heartache all at the same time. And I know that feeling. And it was because her son, his adaptability, because of being under chiropractic care, his adaptability is increased. So now he can follow instructions. He can learn how to participate, and he can actually be a part of what's going on in his life, because now his brain can filter all that information and have a good outcome. So we have parents in our office every single day that are telling us those stories, but even other stories that are comparable, like my child was nonverbal and now they were finally able to tell me, "I love you, mommy." They were finally able to say a word or a 3-word sentence, or even tell me about, their new puppy and actually elaborate on something. So as we increase a child's adaptability, we truly increase their brain function. So they can have a higher degree of brain function. They can concentrate better. They can calm their emotions, all of those things. And so they just have a much better outcome. What we see coming at them, all that stress, actually gets filtered, and it actually gets adapted, and it's not just spewing back out at us like meltdowns, behaviors, anxiety, all that stuff. So to help your sensory kiddo, a few steps just to review. Number 1, tune in. There is no shame in your parent game for deciding that maybe something in the moment isn't working for your kid and you're going to change it. Your loyalties to your child, not any Christmas party or situation. However, we know you don't want to miss out on life, but more importantly, you don't want them to miss out on their life, holidays, good experiences, and all those things that come with this time of year. So you do have the ability to increase their adaptability, and that's what we do here. So second thing, increase physical activity. Next, you want to make sure that you are helicoptering a little bit. It's okay to be that helicopter parent and decrease some of that chemical load on your kiddo. But lastly, I really want to empower you to take an opportunity to actually have your child's nervous system checked. So you don't really know what your child's adaptability is until you measure it. And I can promise you it's something that you have never measured. So if you find yourself in a place, or you have girlfriends or sisters or, anybody who has children that are struggling with something like this, and that they truly need a breakthrough in their health and their family life and everything, we are here to serve them, and we want to be a resource to these parents. It's something we dedicate a lot of time to because of our own personal experiences and breakthroughs with our own children through pediatric chiropractic care. So a few things. Reach out to our office on Facebook, on Instagram, call us, email, whatever. Reach out to us. Also, tag your friends and family that need help with this topic, okay? So you can tag them in this post, you can share this post, you can save it, copy the link and send it to them, because they seriously deserve to have this information. And then lastly, we also have public health education events for parents that have kids that are struggling. We have one coming up this Saturday, and it is called Brunch with the Sensory Docs. It's here at our office in South Arlington. It's from 10 to 12. We have one about once a month where we have about 20 to 25 parents come, and we literally hash out what's going on in our child's brain, how that they can fix it. Because the truth is, the brain is adaptable and you can get it on the right channel. So we want to help you do the same. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. And we truly wish you a very happy and let's just say merry holiday, right? And Christmas. So thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. And we look forward to hearing from you and also helping you. Bye.